Hello, Canada. This is Vamos, presented by Degree. We have a Saturday show assembled for you with Jordan Wilson and Alexander Gange Ruzik. I am Adam Jenkins. The clock is already ticking for Canada's what feels like colossal match at this point, coming up against Peru on Tuesday. And with the 2-0 match already in the books, we have everything to look forward to against the Peruvians. A 5 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Pacific starts on Tuesday. And I would like to begin with my co host today with a bit of a temperature check about how Canada could fare. We saw yesterday in Arlington, Peru and Chile playing to a 0-0 decision. And we have to start, Jordan, with a thought on where we are heading into this match and heading into the match considering what the other nations in our group had done. 0-0 and playing Argentina to a tight second half 2-0 decision. Jordan, how are you feeling with those two games in the books and a big one on Tuesday on the horizon?
I feel great. I don't know if everyone feels the same way that I do, dissecting the match, but even watching the highlights back and being present, um, many football matches, we love it and it's poetry, right? It's something that but this was exciting. This was like edge of your seat stuff. And it wasn't just because you were playing Argentina and Lionel Messi, it's the
Mm.
fact that Canada came out and played their new style and did it very well. Some games when you watch, they could just be a bit slow, but this one wasn't. I mean, the high line, the way that they ran so much, sprinted into certain positions and made things very difficult for Argentina. This is why I liked it. I'm feeling good about this match, but I'm also feeling like this is a time, which we'll get in the show, where they have to finish their dinner. Like stuff is just you're working hard, and we need to get something out of this Canadian men's national team where that's their reward. They're running all these kilometers. They're buying into this new system. They're going to Copa America. Everyone's looking at them. The eyes are on them. And you have these moments where you just want them to really finish their dinner and have that joy. That header that needs to go across the line, that shot that should be taken, that near post run where they need to get first. They're that close to really getting the good parts and that good success. But I'm feeling great about this team. I'm feeling great about going into Tuesday, but they just got to finish their lunch and their dinner.
Alex, always a man who looks at the glass half full, but also sometimes pragmatic when we need you to be. How are you feeling this morning?
Yeah, I'd say I'd feel pretty good just in the sense that there were things that I really liked about Canada's play, right? Like I think the first half in particular, they were so compact defensively. Because that's the thing, if you're playing a high line and you're pressing, you can't have guys pressing up in the other box and then defenders sitting in your own half. They're incredibly compact. It was remarkable. Like there was times where Bombito and Cornelius were about 10 feet away from David and Laren. Like they were so close on the pitch. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. And that caused a lot of trouble for a guy like Messi between the lines because there were no between the lines didn't exist because Canada was so tight, so compact, which you like to see. And offensively, they generated chances, which I mean, we'll get into the attack more in depth, but there's two sides of the coin. You can generate chances and miss them, or you cannot generate them at all. At least they were generating them at 0-0 and 1-0 too. There were about three or four that could have changed the game. Maybe they get one, the game plan changes. And that's the way looking back and something I kind of realized. Argentina really only broke the game apart and had their dominant end, like 3xG, all these shots, etc. After the goal. Until the goal,
Right.
Canada arguably was the better team, and it shows that if they just could have, like Jordan mentioned, finished their dinner, heck, even just a little snack would have been okay. Just get a bite on something. That's all they needed in a game like that. So I think I'd be pretty confident. But of course, what's fascinating is that these two games are about to play are quite different from what they did against
Yes.
Argentina and Chile or against Argentina. But I guess on the flip side, if they did that against the top team, you'd be confident heading into the other games where they do have a legitimate qualitative advantage. And I think that's worth mentioning.
And what's fascinating about these tournaments is that in some ways this is uncharted territory. It's a brand new environment, especially in a tournament like this. Canada only having qualified for Copa for just the second time ever. And the second time ever takes us nicely to the World Cup. because, of course, in Qatar, Canada was brought to the big dance for just the second time in this program's history. And after a strong start to the tournament, you have to find ways and opportunities to look back and draw parallels or draw learning moments to find sort of the baseline or the barometer for where this team is. In Qatar, they started with that brilliant performance, near misses, what ifs galore. But from there, after the draw to Belgium, you had to look at it and say, okay, what needs to be done now? And in Qatar, obviously, the disappointment was that the goals didn't come, the wins didn't come, and Canada left the tournament feeling, well, disappointed to say the least. What do they need to have taken, Alex, from that experience after starting the tournament in a decent position, but understanding that results needed to come in the final couple of matches, and implement into this group, this competition, to change the way things had ended in Asia?
It's funny you mentioned the question because I'd already been looking just kind of back at the World Cup and drawing some parallels. And funnily enough, all of the mistakes they made across the three games ended up manifesting themselves in the first game. It was like Belgium was finish your chances. Well, they didn't finish their chances against Argentina. And then, you look at not being or getting stretched defensively against Croatia. Well, the second half, they got a bit stretched defensively against Argentina. And then lastly, defensive mistakes against Morocco that you can't make. Some similar situation against Argentina. So I think it showed that you just have to be clinical. You have to execute on their performances. Sometimes in tournament football, you might play terribly, but if you're clinical, if you're effective in what you do, that's important. Canada's done that in CONCACAF, where sometimes they've had some ugly performances, nothing to write home about. You get a clinical goal, you win. The other team's sitting there thinking, man, we were way better than this Canadian side, but we didn't win. That's football sometimes in these sorts of games. But now I think for Canada, the key is game two, because if you're not going to win game one, game two becomes an absolute must win. And that's where Canada kind of messed up at the World Cup. And I say that just because of the three games, Belgium was the winnable one and they dropped it. Croatia was always going to be tough. What's nice is that I'm looking Peru versus Argentina. You know which game you'd rather play and which game you have a chance of winning. You need to win this because you win this game, you have a pretty good chance of advancing. You might only need a draw in the last game to do so. You lose, you might be out. A draw
Yeah.
kind of puts you in between. So this game too really changes everything. And I think they're going to have to approach this with extreme professionalism because, again, you saw what game two in Qatar, maybe they got a bit eager. They get that early goal against Croatia, like, oh, we're right in this. We got this. Everything fell apart. All of a sudden, you're limited. You don't even have a game three. I think for Canada, you have to make sure you at least survive to game three. And I think do so with a win.
Jordan.
A win is absolutely attainable. If you asked me this before the tournament, I would just say let's gauge where this men's national team is at. But I think looking at the way that they're staying in games and the way that they're going about their philosophy and how they want to play, there's something in it in this game. It will be different, as AGR already mentioned. You're playing Peru. There's going to be a lot more elbows, a lot more fouls, a lot more grit and grind. But I also think this is coming at a time where Canada has played number 7, second, and first ranked team in the world. So you have to think you're going to this match feeling like, we can knock boots with the best of them. I think what needs to happen is there's stages, and it's easy for me to say this here. And of course, these players know this, and Jesse Marsh and everyone will know. But I think you work so hard defensively, talking about pressing and all these things. And there's a feeling, and I had this even when I was playing. And if you're a defender and you're defending with your life, and your whole team is, and there's that one moment, a header maybe from Eustachio or a cutback for Laren or the little near post header for David, where you're like, this could be that chance, and you don't get it, you're not throwing your hands up in the air and saying, oh, why am I going to defend? But you want that reward. And that's where they're at right now. I believe if Canada score first against Peru, they're taking 3 points. And if not, at least 1. But that should be the goal right now, looking at this team and this camp. It's like, you've done all this hard work, 270 plus minutes of grinding, but no goal to come of it. If you get a goal against Peru, you can dream, and they could actually make it out of this group. They could. They just have to get that goal and get things rolling.
Well, Jordan mentions goals and scoring. It is a bit of the elephant in the room, or for our Canadian audience, the house hippo in the closet. It's the thing we need to talk about, despite it being
Have
right there
never
in
heard that
front
one.
of us. You will
Wow.
absolutely not disrespect the house hippo on
That
Vamos
is
presented by
wild.
Degree. I will absolutely not tolerate any kind of house hippo slander.
Woo!
Alex, goals, offense, scoring. Of course, it is the thing that wins matches. And under Jesse Marsh, we've seen them play two very good games after a disappointing second half against the Dutch. But the difference is Canada needs to start scoring goals. Are you worried about this fact that they have now gone 270 minutes under their new gaffer without finding the back of the net? Or do you think Jonathan David and Kyle Larin are about to sort things out, fire into gear, and welcome in a new wave of excitement under Jesse Marsh?
I'd say I am worried. I mean, the way they're looking at the net right now, maybe it is looking like a closet and less like a net. It just feels like it's.
Thank you, Alex.
I had to continue a bit off of what you said there, but no, I need to find a way to abbreviate this better. But it's a stat I've been referencing a lot later, and I will continue. Canada versus top 25 non-CONCACAF opposition. Again, I need to find a way to make that less
A little
wordy.
wordy, but it's important.
It's important. Canada's only scored since the start of 2022. They've only scored 5 goals against those opponents. And I think what's interesting is that of the active roster this tournament, the only guy who's scored is Alfonso Davies, right? It's Croatia. The other guys is Steven Vittori against Japan, Lucas Cavallini against Japan, Junior Hoylett against Japan the other time they played him, and an own goal from against Morocco. That means there isn't a situation where Jonathan David, Kyle Larin have scored in those sorts of games, and now you wonder who's going to be able to step up. Davies is playing fullback right now and a lot more focus on the defensive side of the game. And now Jonathan David has 1 goal in his last 8 for Canada. Kyle Larin has 1 in his last 9. Tajon Buchanan has none in 18. Those are the 3 guys you want to score. I'm very worried because I think the big thing is looking at the last 3 games. They're not shooting enough. Jonathan David only has 2 shots. Kyle Larin as well only has 2 shots. It's worth noting that yes, Jonathan David is a great finisher, but he also is a volume shooter. I was going through the stats last night. He was top 10 in the in terms of shots. I think he was 6th. He's someone who you get a lot of shots, he will score a lot of goals. Kyle Larin's, similar situation at Valladolid. He had 2.54 shots per game and he was scoring a lot of goals. Last year, his shots dropped all the way to less than 2 per game. Jonathan David, for reference, last year at Lille was around 2.4 per game. They're not shooting the ball enough. And that's kind of the challenge of, is that happening? Because when they're together, there's not enough shots to go around for the both of them. Is it the system? Is it just the level of opponent where you might only get 1 or 2 shots? Those are all questions to wonder. And I think it's something where, yes, it's been great to see David do well in the buildup in this formation. It's been great to see Larin work his tail off defensively. But at the end of the day, those are guys who are asked to score goals, and we're not seeing it. I guess the only point of optimism is they are getting chances. Like I said, I'm a team that if you're getting chances, you will score goals. Jesse Marsh appears to be that team as well, but it is a bit worried that the trend's building now.
Producer Ellie pitches in with the NCT minus 25 per 90. I don't know that that solves Alex's problem. Jordan, to you, with the caveat of what makes defenders panic or worry or face a bit of a headache when they are dealing with this 2-man strike partnership as Canada has been playing?
I think personally for me, the nightmares I've had when you have to play against 2 is just the decisions that you have to make on the fly really quickly. I think when you have 1 striker, obviously if you're playing probably with 1, there's probably a midfielder floating around somewhere that might not be your worry. But when you have 2, you're constantly, when you have one striker, you're worried about his movement and what that player is going to do. When you have 2, it's what they do together sometimes. So it's really taking in the environment. For example, if you're looking at Canada, what I love about David and Larin up top is that I think they're both extremely talented at what they do, but they can complement each other because David has the ability to come short, to also maybe make runs late into the box. And you have to worry about 2 players. To AJR's point, it's hard seeing a Canadian team without those 2 on it, just because we know that they can score. But I'm looking at the last little bit. Even watching Argentina play is like the crosses coming into the box or the decisions to make for a cutback. It's almost like I feel watching that there's maybe a bit of a panic, like we gotta score. I trust Larin, Buchanan, David, Miller, like all these players that we have, I trust them in a situation around the box. There just needs to be a little bit more like ease. It's almost like so much focus has been on the defending bit, which I understand. It's transformed and changed the way Canada has looked at games. And I don't think they could mess with the Netherlands, Argentina, and France if they didn't have that type of system. But the fun part and what everyone really loves about this team is how they go forward and how free flowing they've been and how they can score when they have those opportunities. So, like, if I could say to any of these players, is just have that almost being relaxed in front of goal. A bit of urgency to get into that spot, but relax because they can do it. And I agree with AJR about volume. Obviously, the more chances, but I think when you play better teams and also in tournament football, you don't get so many chances. You have to punish one or two. That has to be the time that you score. But that 1-2 punch for me still seems like the way to go for Jesse Marsh and for Canada.
Well, one of the talking points coming out of the 2-0 defeat to Argentina, and there were many, from the horrific racism that Moise Bombito had to face, from the way that Canada played brilliantly well but did not finish their chances, but also something that maybe in hindsight we could have seen coming, but still comes as a bit of a surprise, is just the amount of criticism that the natural grass pitch that was laid on top of the artificial turf at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and didn't necessarily have time to take, and the criticism it drew. Emi Martinez was one of the people who spoke out about the playing surface. He told TY Sports, quote, "The pitch was a disaster. We have to improve in that aspect, or else the Copa America will always be a level lower than the European Championship." Jordan, is this criticism fair for a tournament of this magnitude, or does it show perhaps that with the way Canada played, it had Argentina just a little bit rattled?
I think this has everything to do with the pitch. I think it was poor for both sides. Obviously, a team like Argentina that loves to play out the back and have their midfielders get on the ball. Thought Canada was great at subduing them from not doing the things that they like. But the pitch was bad for both sides, and for the opening match of Copa America 2024, it was just unacceptable. You shouldn't be playing. I shouldn't be watching a game for me at home and seeing the ball go up and then there's dead spots. Like that is something that happens U14 around the playground for a pitch that doesn't get manicured. Like this is Lionel Messi, Alfonso Davies, all these players, all these stars. Like one has to do with their safety, and people don't think about that. They're like, oh well, it's a bit bumpy and rocky. When you're running as fast as they are and stopping and having to switch off, God forbid players that are hurting themselves at this tournament because of the pitch. It's just a bigger problem. Get the right surface. Anytime you lay down grass on turf a few days before, it's a recipe for disaster.
It's just the most American thing that I've ever heard, Alex. Lay down grass on the fake grass, and we'll find a way to make this show go with no problems.
It was, yeah, it was crap. It was farcical. Like you pick your term. What's ridiculous too about it was the timeline. They
Right.
played an MLS game on Saturday and they have a game on Thursday. You know this tournament's out for months. In what world are you scheduling a game on a different surface? Like you could also give it some time to come together, right? Like that was another thing that was really dumb, for lack of a way to put it. Another thing too, it's so last minute that you're not able to even train on it on Wednesday. Because at least for players, right? It's like there's a reason why it's a huge thing. It's stadium familiarity. There's a reason for the Champions League final in Europe that both teams train at the
Visualize.
stadium to
Yeah,
get used to the
sure.
environment, get used to the pitch. They didn't let the teams train on it. Heck, it was so secretive. People weren't even allowed to look at it. They had security guards just blocking the grass. You wonder, is it even there? Is it burnt? Is it whatnot? Like you can't have that in a tournament like this. And I think the big point is they're so lucky there's no injuries, because imagine the fallback of Lionel Messi being injured, missing the rest of the tournament because of that pitch. And it's something where, yes, it's not ideal to play on turf, but it's also something where Lionel Scaloni put it well too. He said, "Look, we've known this game was at the stadium for months. We were preparing for turf. It is what it is." To do everything last minute just to throw grass, which didn't end up being safer than the alternative, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous and something that needs to be looked at.
Alex, back to you. You had mentioned a few minutes ago a qualitative advantage for Canada coming into their next match. Is Canada on Tuesday the better team on paper than who they will be facing in Kansas City?
I'd say absolutely. I back that up. I think, you can look at a lot of different objective values, right? Like you can look at market value. Canada has a pretty clear edge, and in terms of players on the pitch, of course, Alfonso Davies and Jonathan David will be better than anyone on a lot of teams. So that's a big one. Even just again, you can debate top five leagues. Canada's got more of those players than Peru. It is 100% a qualitative advantage, and they will be the better team. But that's not the challenge for Canada. You have to say, yeah, we're the better team. We can play the better football. We can control the game. We can do all those things, but also be aware that this isn't going to be, your typical game.
Jordan, do you agree?
I do agree, and also just to add to AGR's point, second place finish in 2019, like that's what adds. You get a country like Canada going into a Copa America that has never been here before, and then play Argentina that just won the Copa America and also just won the World Cup.
What was
But
it?
so
Oh,
you're a bit
yes, that's
shell
right. The
shocked.
World Cup. Yes.
Just the World Cup. Yes. They're a bit shell shocked, right? I think Peru, the way that they even line up, saw yesterday against Chile. AJ and I were just joking about before we aired. It's just like how many stops were in that game, and this is what we expected in this type of tournament with these South American teams. The tackles, the bumps, all these little things, all these little idiosyncrasies that come with this type of tournament. That's new to Canada. So as much as on paper you look at this team and you know the talent that they have, they're like the dark arts that they loom. They also have an effect. Peru have been here. Like they know what it takes to get the job done. And I'm excited for a match of a team where you can see Canada maybe take that step in the right direction. But Peru just know that they're not going to give anything easy. This is the perfect test at the perfect time for Canada.
And as I mentioned, of course, there are 3 points on the line, but it's also the loser must change their flag. That is just a fact. There can only be one that keeps the red triband alive. The tournament, guys, really gets underway in a lot of ways this weekend, with Group A dominating the first couple of matches, both in Georgia and in Texas. But now it's Group B's turn to really present themselves to the international audience. And yes, the Copa America group stage match, Mexico and Jamaica, is next. Yes, we understand that's a little bit bizarre in Houston. That is 8 p.m. on Saturday, following, Ecuador and Venezuela from Santa Clara, California. Sunday, the U.S. and Bolivia and Uruguay, who are many people's favorites in this tournament, and Panama. Who needs a win the most, Jordan Wilson?
I wouldn't say the most. I guess everyone's talking about when they look at CONCACAF and the teams, kind of have written the Reggae Boys off, at least the people that I talked to. And I think if you go and play Mexico tonight and you can get a result, hopefully a win, this is a team that can maybe book themselves into the next round. They could, because Mexico, Venezuela, and Ecuador, there's going to be some fights going on with these three nations. If Jamaica can get 3 points off the rip, off the jump, they could actually dream a little bit about the next round and sort things out. So for me, you could pick other teams, but I'm just rooting and really excited to tune into that match of Mexico and Jamaica this evening.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm going to go on the opposite side of that match. I'm going to go Mexico.
We're
facing off. We got the Bucks up. We're facing off, Jordan.
No, I like it.
I got Mexico because look, we have to remember the pressure is on them because they're one of the co-hosts in 2 years for the World Cup. And you look at the other co-hosts. The other co-hosts are doing pretty well in the sense that the U.S. they've got an excellent generation on paper. How it actually looks at in practice has been a question. Meanwhile, Canada's had their best generation, in a long time, if not ever. Meanwhile, Mexico, they've been regressing hard. You've been seeing it in CONCACAF. They haven't been able to play at that same level that they were for decades. They won a Gold Cup last year, but when you look at Nations League, which has kind of been the best on best now, they've lost 3 editions in a row, which for a country like that's unacceptable. You look on paper, they have like an Edson Alvarez, but so many of their best young players aren't getting out of Mexico. They're going back to Mexico at the first sign of adversity. There's questions of, is Liga MX able to compete with the top European leagues? Like this is a huge moment for Mexico because you look at them on paper, they have history in Copa America. They've made deep runs in a Copa America in the past. They have the talent, in theory, the history to do well at this tournament. And I think heading into the 2026 World Cup, you don't want to embarrass yourselves at hosts. And I think US and Canada are setting themselves up where they should at least make a run in the knockouts. Generally, with how Mexico is, it's hard to know if that's going to be the case. And I think a good Copa America, kind of straighten things out, 'cause it's been a chaotic last few years, could do a world of good, because they're obviously building something right now with the new coach they brought in last year. But I think a tournament like this will be massive, because if they flame out, there's going to be some tough questions asked of them.
Well, we have about 4 minutes remaining on Vamos presented by Degree. So now we get to everyone's favorite segment. If you've been with us since day one, you will appreciate the complexities and sometimes insane nuance of either or. And sometimes there's 3 options, which defeats the purpose of this game. But we love it. And we're going to focus today, boys, on roster construction and dream worlds. Let's build a team together and start between the sticks. Either Emiliano Martinez, we mentioned the Argentine goalkeeper before, or Brazilian goalkeeper Alisson. Alex.
I'm gonna go bold. I just like Emi Martinez's mentality. I think I'd want him in a tournament. He's a fighter, right? I like the mentality.
This is commendable. You do need to bring in Emi Martinez to a knife fight, Jordan.
100%. And as the multifaceted, talented Oliver Platt, the segment is either or.
That's
you
right.
always have a little extra. Emi Martinez is the guy for me, because I think in tournament football, there is a chance you're going to penalties at a point. And who else would you want in between the sticks than Emi Martinez? This guy is a different class. He needs to write a book on the psychology of a goalkeeper, because he is just, he's there's no one like him in terms of big moments.
Either or either or, with 3 options for the next question, Jordan. Edson Alvarez, Steph Eustachio, or Tyler Adams holding things down in midfield.
I love Steph. I love the way he plays. But Tyler Adams for me I've been a fan of his for a while, even from Red Bull days. Like, I think the role and how much he exudes when he plays for his nation, it is just a pure, like, he's almost a player and a half most games. The kilometers he runs, the areas that he's willing to be in, the way that he sacrifices for his team, it just permeates throughout the squad. So it's hard to go against him. I think he's one of the top defensive midfielders at the tournament, honestly.
Alex.
Yeah, I'm going Edson Alvarez. West Ham's kind of was my guilty watch last year, and he was, reason why. Just the way he plays in midfield, that Ajax ball, class in possession, but also, he brings some of that Mexican personality, the fire to the field. I think in a tournament like this, you need a bit of quality, but you need a bit of fight. So similar theme to my first choice.
2 minutes to go. We keep moving up. I will allow the option to introduce third options, gentlemen, but remind you that this is rapid fire. Uruguay's Fede Valverde or Alexis McAllister of Argentina?
I'm going Valverde. I just like
me
the
too,
pedigree.
but
It's tough.
it's always tough when you look at these situations and you have someone that's an all-rounder and then you have someone that is great going forward. It's just like, pick your poison. Like, what do you want on the day? But Valverde, off of Real winning the Champions League as well, and just the player that he is, it's hard to go against him, against anyone, truthfully.
Alex, time to send the social media hordes after you, because this question will ruffle some feathers. Lionel Messi, who we know famously is not at his peak right now, or Vinny Jr.?
Give me Messi, just because I think if you build to his strengths as Argentina has, he's just a magician. He does different things on the pitch. He was bad on against Canada, and he still created 5 big chances, almost scored a few goals. On a different day, it's a 2-goal, 2-assist game, and you're laughing. Give me Messi. I love Vinicius. I think he's going to pop off, but you still got to go with the GOAT right now.
Toto.
Messi's a cheat code specifically for Argentina, because they built a system that has him thriving. He can basically roam and do what he wants. And guess what? He has players looking for him at all times. So if he's not going to score, he's going to assist. This is Messi's tournament for sure.
This question in the rundown, the last one I'm going to leave you with, is meant to get somebody in trouble. Either Jordan, Jesse Marsh, or Greg Berhalter.
Jesse Marsh all day. I saw him singing the Canadian national anthem. And
yeah, that was awesome. Shout out.
I was like, Marsh, you won me over, buddy. Marsh all day, baby.
So
Alex.
I'm with you on that one. Jesse Marsh is just the personality, the energy he's brought to the group. It seemed to add a different energy, different mentality. So I'm with you on that one.
Let's get out of here. This has been Vamos presented by Degree. My thanks to Alex Gange-Ruzic and Jordan Wilson. New content every day as we cover Canada at the Copa CanMNT.